and welcome to Season 3, Episode 40 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in ECW history with match number 11 on our list, which is the Loser Leaves Town match between Raven and Tommy Dreamer from Wrestlepalooza 97 on June the 7th, 1997. This match slides in at the number 11 spot. It was probably the hardest match that I've had on this entire countdown as to where it should fit. And the reason I say that is because if you strip away all of the aftermath that occurs after this match, and you just look at the match itself, while it is still great, it maybe shouldn't be as high on the list as it is. If I fully take all of the aftermath and look at it, as a whole big picture, then I could argue that it should be higher on the list than it is at number 11. So I kind of split the difference, and I felt that overall, it would be unfair to take all of these external factors that play into the match itself and, allow that to get this match into the top 10. But I also felt that it should be valued and have it very close to that top 10, if that makes sense. So at the end of the day, ultimately, it's my list. I can do what I want, but that was kind of my justification, behind it hitting its spot at number 11. So basically what's going on with this match, I'm not going to go through the entire, Raven Dreamer saga. I'm sure there's write-ups on the internet that would do a far better job, than I can in, the 10 minutes or so that I allot to these videos. But basically, this was the ultimate feud. It started at the start of 95. The story is that Dreamer has never pinned Raven. It happened on early house shows, when these two first started feuding, but then it became that kind of, big part of the overall feud, that Paulie decided to exploit for the feud. So even though it wasn't necessarily true, Tommy had never pinned Raven on anything other than a fan cam. So, if you don't do that deep dive into ECW with all of the fan cams, you would not be aware that he actually scored a fall at one point or another. So you have Dreamer that's never beat Raven. It's been established that he can't beat Raven. Throughout 96, they'd started to cool down on this feud a little bit and transitioned into Raven and Sandman with everything involving Sandman's family. Through 97, they kicked this back in while Raven was the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. Tommy Dreamer ultimately ended up giving up his spot, to potentially challenge Raven to Terry Funk, his hero and his mentor. That led to Funk winning the title from Raven at Barely Legal. And finally, we would get this big final blow-off between Raven and Dreamer. This match was supposed to happen at Hardcore Heaven 97 in August, which would have been ECW's second pay-per-view. However, Raven was going to WCW early, and that led to this match getting bumped up to Wrestlepalooza. There's signs in the crowd talking about, Raven headed to WCW and that he would be losing this match. So I'm assuming, although I didn't have the internet in 1997, I'm assuming that the news was out there through the dirt sheets that, this would be it. Raven would be wrapping up his ECW career here. So, that sort of plants the seed that, okay, Tommy is going to win this match. However, we know ECW, we know Paulie's booking, we know that there's always swerves. So there is still that bit of reasonable doubt that Tommy could ultimately still lose this match somehow. This match feels important and it feels huge. Now, as incredible as the entire Raven Dreamer saga is, in ring, in my opinion, they never really had a good match before this one. A lot of their matches would be kind of, heavy on just the meandering brawls through the crowd and, using whatever weapon the fans have and hitting each other with frying pans and stuff like that. You would get lots of drama, in the finishing stretch, where it would look like Dreamer would win, but then somehow Raven would pull it out. And that was always exciting, but the matches themselves would never have much to them. This match, I'm happy to say, is the exception. Everything here I think is great. It has this big feel. Joey Styles does a phenomenal job on commentary here. Rick Rude is on commentary with them as well, which again it feels kind of weird, hearing Rick Rude, but that was his role in '97. He came in, had a feud with Shane Douglas, and that's another story for another time. But he was also the commentary partner of Joey Styles, so he's on commentary here. They do a really good job of putting over how big and how important this match is. And Raven and Dreamer, they just work it with just extra, oomph in everything that they do. It feels brisk, it feels really heated, and it feels really reckless. And all of that crowd brawling stuff that, in my opinion, would be kind of boring in their previous matches, it's really enthralling and really engaging here, and really crazy. Raven throws Dreamer off a set of bleachers through a table. He pushes him off a ladder, like onto a vending machine, and then Tommy falls off the vending machine to the concrete. Raven goes for a pile driver on Tommy on a table, but the table kind of slips, and it's basically just a pile driver right onto the concrete floor from an elevation. It was nuts. They go for that spot again, and Tommy back body drops Raven onto a table. It doesn't break, and then just kind of like hurls his body at the table. It's really reckless and really chaotic and really exciting. They're both bleeding in the crowd. And when we eventually get into the ring, they don't waste a lot of time, and they go right into this extended sequence of near falls and callbacks through their feuds. And again, Joey Styles does a good job, if you're not, privy to everything in the feud, of kind of telling you why things are important. But if you've watched all of ECW, consecutively like I did for this project, it really feels like a great payoff with all of the great little callbacks they do. So Raven at this point, he's got a weird band of misfits. He's got Lupus, who's like a guy that picks his nose. I don't know, it's super weird. He's got Chastity, who would ultimately, be in WCW eventually, with the Sandman as Hack. She would also manage Just Incredible for a while, post this Raven thing. But she's out there with Raven, and it all kind of feels weird. And we're used to Raven with the BWO and with Stevie, and with his various valets, either Beulah or Kimona or Peaches or whoever we would have. So it kind of feels a little off. But again, it makes sense because Raven's leaving, right? But the overbooking we have here it's just also great. So Tommy gets a sign from the crowd that would ultimately have, like a stop sign in it, which they did previous in their feud. He gets a near fall, and Lupus breaks it up. And Joey Styles does a great job talking about how, they had a match at Hostile City Showdown in '95 where Dreamer was going to win, and Stevie Richards broke it up. They do a spot where Beulah ends up interfering to take out Lupus with the DDT, and Raven kind of grabs her, and then it's, Raven brought Beulah into ECW. They used to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Was Beulah going to turn on Tommy and side with Raven? That doesn't happen. We get the big cat fight between Chastity and Beulah, and Chastity ends up spraying hairspray in Tommy's eyes, which was a spot that Beulah did when she initially made her debut, spraying hairspray in Tommy's eyes. So it's all getting kind of wrapped back in. We get ref bumps, we get interference. Louis Spicolli comes in for the interference, which again is something great that Paulie does, where he'll transition one feud into the next. Ultimately, Louis Spicolli, rest in peace, Louis, would end up, leaving ECW kind of quickly and go to WCW and be Scott Hall's lackey before, unfortunately he would pass away from his drug overdose. But here he interferes. And that leads us right into our big finish, where he goes for the Spicolli driver on Tommy. Tommy counters it into a DDT. Raven hits a flash even flow DDT on Tommy for a really hot 2. He also got a really hot 2 off a Schoolboy during this whole skirmish. He goes for another DDT, and it's the opposite, where Tommy counters that DVD into a Spicolli driver of his own. And then finally plants Raven with one last DDT on the sign to finally get that win. And just the facial expression that Tommy gives, knowing that he has that relief, that he's finally gotten that monkey off his back, he's finally pinned Raven, and ultimately has sent Raven packing from ECW. It's just so gratifying to see that facial expression. He does a really good job selling it. Once the match is done, though, we don't have any time to breathe here. So again, typical Tommy Dreamer in ECW, where whenever it seems like he's finally going to get his due, something happens. It would happen in 2000 when he would finally win the ECW World Heavyweight title, only for Just Incredible to steal that moment from him. The same thing happens here. Before he can really celebrate about finally beating Raven, the lights go out. When they come back on, we have Rob Van Dam in a Monday Night Raw t-shirt. We talked yesterday about the whole kind of WWF faction that was going on, and RVD hits Tommy Dreamer with the Van Daminator. Tommy somehow manages to mount a comeback, and the lights go out again. And when they come back on, it's Sabu now with Rob Van Dam, and they beat down Tommy. And Raven at this point just kind of bails and walks out of the ECW arena toward WCW. Tommy is somehow, starting to make a little bit of a comeback, and the lights go out again. And when they come back on, it's Jerry Lawler standing in the ECW ring. So Jerry Lawler, who, for the past year had been bad-mouthing ECW on WWF commentary, he's in the ECW arena, and the amount of heat he gets is nuclear. And he starts, trashing ECW and Tommy Dreamer and the crowd. And here we get this great point where the ECW roster starts to come out to try to save the day and defend against these WWF quote-unquote invaders. So first, Bill Alfonso starts egging on Shane Douglas, who's sitting in the Eagle's Nest, and Shane Douglas gets on the mic. Shane Douglas was the television champion at this point, and basically says, I have nothing to do with this. I'm not defending ECW. I don't care about the WWF. I'm not involved with any of this. So we get a whole bunch of mid-carders that come out, Balls Mahoney, Axel Rotten, Hack Myers, all of these guys, and they just get trashed by the invaders. A great moment here where Tommy Dreamer, in like an act of defiance, tackles Jerry Lawler while he's on the mic and gives that little bit of hope, and the crowd goes nuts for it, but they continue to beat him down. This brings out the Gangstas. The Gangstas, start brawling with Sabu and RVD on the floor, but eventually they're overtaken. This brings out the Sandman to defend ECW, and the Sandman's overtaken. So we have Tommy, Sandman, the Gangsters, all of the ECW mid-carders that are unable to defeat this trio of Lawler, Van Dam, and Sabu, who are holding court on the ring. But then we eventually get the entrance of Taz. And Taz, who was the ultimate heel from November to Remember 1995, up until Barely Legal, when Fonzie turned on him to join Sabu and RVD, is now the savior of ECW, the ultimate babyface. They do this incredible turn without even really having to do the turn. He comes out and the crowd explodes, and he's saving, the promotion that, he had trouble with for the past year and a half. And it's just this amazing moment. It causes all of the heels to bail finally. And as Taz, stands in the ring, him and Shane Douglas get into a back and forth on commentary of Shane basically telling Taz to get out of his ring. And although, this doesn't have anything to do with the Raven and Tommy match, every segment bleeds into the next, where we would end up getting Sabu coming out, fighting with Taz. That would do an impromptu rematch of their match from Barely Legal. Sabu would end up winning on a flash pin, countering the Taz mission into a roll-up. Shane Douglas would get on the mic and criticize Taz. They would have a back and forth. Taz was going ballistic after losing to Sabu. It would lead to a 3-minute challenge where if Taz wins, he gets Shane's ECW television title, where if Shane wins, Taz would have to leave ECW and essentially leave his ring for the next 60 days. Taz would get the Taz mission. Shane would try the same thing and try to roll over into a pin that Sabu did, but Taz had it scouted this time. Shane Douglas would get choked out. Taz would start his incredible run as the ECW television champion and ultimately start a feud with Shane Douglas that would eventually, at Guilty as Charged 99, lead to Taz finally winning the ECW World Heavyweight title. So much going on here. Again, if you take the complete package, so although this is on the Wrestlepalooza event, Everything from the Tommy Raven match to the end of the Taz Shane match made one episode of Hardcore TV that I think is start to finish the best piece of wrestling television ever produced. It is so exciting. Everything bleeds into the next, which is the classic, Paulie, ECW kind of storytelling approach that they would take. And it's so great. So the whole thing is wonderful. But if you take this match just as is and you kind of cut it, after the Lawler invasion, you take how good the match was, how satisfying it was, you add all the chaos, and this is a perfect, worthy inclusion on this list. The whole package, though, is one of the best things that you'll ever see in wrestling. You can find this match, of course, on the WWE Network. It could be on Peacock. It was on the commercial release, though, of the Rise and Fall of ECW. If you just want to see the Raven Tommy part of it, you can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube, though, so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50, and please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50. Top 50.